Coming up next on Hands on Tech. Ooh, I got a review for you. I spent some time, actually the last couple of weeks, with the Nothing Phone 2, the first Nothing phone to come to the US. I've got thoughts. That's coming up next.
This is TWiT.
Okay, I promised you a review of the Nothing Phone 2. So this right here, this weird, funky looking device is the Nothing Phone 2. And what is the Nothing Phone 2? Well, it is an Android device, of course. But it's an Android device in this day and age of like every device looks the same and every device offers the same stuff. The folks at Nothing are attempting to do something a little bit different. Now, I did not have the opportunity to play around with the Nothing Phone 1 when it came out last year. It was not available in the US for US markets. The Nothing Phone 2 this time around is available in the US, and I will put an asterisk on that, which I will talk about a little bit later, but mostly available in the US, and it's $599. So when you're talking about kind of like the price range or the category that this phone sits in, I would probably put it in the upper mid-range tier of devices. So $599 out the door. The configuration that I have right here in my hand is actually $699. So it's got some upgrades that I'll tell you about. But right off, let's talk a little bit about the design. And you can see, other than the fact that it's a little smudgy, because that is glass on the back that my fingerprints have gone to town on. You can see that the thing that sets this apart is this kind of see-through back display. They really kind of lean into the fact that this phone looks very different from other phones because they're letting you see into the phone. The glass actually is transparent. Now, what you're looking at is not the true internals of the phone. I mean, some of it is. I can explain it a little bit, but what you're really looking at is kind of like a back plate that looks a lot like you're looking into a phone, but it's covering a lot of the, the stuff that, like, I would love to see this phone where you actually see the circuit board, but you don't get that here. What you do get are these, what they call glyphs. And I'm wondering if I can get it to light up sometimes. Yeah, there you go. I got that little blink when I set it down on the table. I think I have a feature right now activated that says flip to shh, which turns off the sound of my device. But if I get a notification, it will do these glyph lights in a very particular way. That little flash that you saw there, if you're watching the video version, just tells you that, okay, it's activated. But if I got a notification, these lights would do different things. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So that's definitely a differentiator. You've got a couple, of cameras up here, a little microphone hole. So that's kind of neat that you see these things, right? There's a little red LED there that shines when you've got when you're video recording, so people know, oh, hey, they're recording. And then on the other side, you've got an always on display. And I think overall, the design is it feels very iPhone-ish. Like it's got that kind of like flat sides look to it. If I was just showing this, it would look a lot like an iPhone, just in the way that I'm kind of showing the profile on the video version. And it feels a lot like an iPhone in your hand. The rear glass is rounded right up to the edge, which gives it a nice kind of like comfortable spot in the palm when you're holding it. It also, though, means that it's really slippery. If you're setting this on a table that has any sort of downward slope, you'll start to see your phone kind of creep off to the side. Or if you put it on a stack of pages of paper that's like not perfectly level, it'll fall off. I had that happen a couple of times. Thankfully, the phone comes with a screen protector already installed, and you can kind of see very, very lightly here. That screen protector has taken some damage. In a couple of weeks, I have some scratches that have ended up there, but thankfully that's just the screen protector. That's not the display itself. But overall, it's a very unique design. Like you pull this phone out, I've had a couple of comments from people just in random places like, what is that? And this is not a case. This is what the phone actually looks like on its own. Feels pretty thin. It's a nice device. So touching on the glyphs for a second, and the glyphs, again, this is the LEDs on the back. This is kind of like the standout. You've got the see-through on the back design, and then you've got the glyphs back there. And I'm going to go ahead in the OS and try not to get any reflections here. If I do a search for glyph in settings, I can go to this glyph light section here. This allows you to really dial things up. You've got a little brightness for all those lights on the back. The ringtones, the like stock ringtones tie into the lights in back. So as you can see on the back here, like I said, these glyphs do different things. And if you go into the settings, you have the option to set different ringtones that tie into it. And, it kind of has like a R2-D2 feel to it, which can get really annoying over time. But you can kind of see, the dynamic of all of these different lights and what they can do. I'm going to go ahead and silence these things so they don't happen when I don't want them to. But in those settings areas, you also have the ability, like I said earlier, that flip to glyph. You can actually kind of go in here and set up your own rhythms and stuff and record it down so that it does all these things on the back and everything. And when this is happening, by the way, I'm also getting a little bit of that haptic kind of kickback that kind of, improves the experience, I guess, a little bit. Now, is any of the, and you can also set apps. So I can go in here and I can say, if I get a notification from a chat app, I want these glyphs to do this thing or that. That way, if it's set down on a table, I might not even hear it. It might be silenced, but if a certain light comes on, I will know, oh, that's a message from my wife. I need to check that sort of thing. And then there are also third-party integrations. So I think the only third-party integration they have right now is with Uber. They're hoping that others will build it out. But if you're waiting for an Uber, the light on the back will show you the progress. All of this is to say it's interesting, not necessarily essential. Like none of this is like, oh my goodness, how did I ever live without it? But it's a neat little differentiator, so I'll give it that. So that's the Glyph kind of rundown, which I'd say is the really strong differentiator for the Nothing Phone 2. The display itself, 6.7-inch LTPO. So that basically means it can ramp between 1 to 120 hertz, depending on what you're using and what app you're using and what it's doing. It's a 1080p display, so it's not a 4K. It's not even a 2K display, but to my eyes, this display looks great. Like the sharpness and everything, I don't feel like it needs to be any sharper than that. The high refresh really makes up for it, and it helps in the battery department, which I'm going to talk about shortly. But all is to say, the display is great. It's a flat display. It's not curved on the sides. The fingerprint sensor is a little low on the device for my preference. I like it to be more like kind of in that region instead of like right near the chin area. But I mean, it works without fail for me 90% of the time. And the always on display that is activated, as a part of the OLED display that we have on board here is really nice. You can actually put widgets on your lock screen and everything too, if you like, but I didn't really do that much. Inside, Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 processor. This device that I have here is a 12 gig of RAM. You can get 8 as well. You can also get from 128 to 512 gigs of storage. This has 256. Now, this is last year's system on a chip. The Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 is from last year. It's the same processor that you're going to find on the Z Fold, the latest Z Fold from Samsung. But I found it to be incredibly performant, no problems whatsoever. I don't see this as a downside at all, other than, potentially you're losing a year of kind of longevity out of it. But right now, like out of the gate in 2023, this thing performs as good as, pretty much any phone that I'm using right now. So I did, however, find a slowdown in the camera app, and I don't know if it'll do it. But when I really wanted to when I had someone in place and I wanted to tap like 2 or 3, you can see how it I don't know, it kind of gets confused, or it's not able to always keep up with all those taps. Right now it is. It's almost like it worked through whatever problem it had, and now it's having a okay time keeping up. But I experienced that on more than a few occasions, a little bit of a slowdown, almost like it had to ramp up in the camera. But speaking of the camera, you have two 50 megapixel cameras on the back. You have the main and you have the wide. I did include some photo samples for if you're watching the video version of this review. And I would say in general, especially like with ample light, things look pretty sharp. Kind of zooming in on some of the detail and everything. I was pretty happy with the pictures that came out of this low light, I had mixed results. Some of these pictures might look familiar because they're here in the studio. But that's, that looks maybe a little washed out, but it looks pretty nice. Get some close-ups, see some clarity. I'd say overall that I was pretty happy with the camera in most good light situations. If it's a darker lighting situation, it was very hit or miss, but there you go. And then as far as the software is concerned, what you're seeing here looks more like a standard Android OS. They're doing something they call Nothing OS 2.0. It's based on Android 13. So everything looks, more or less pretty similar. You can obviously see like little touches like the Wi-Fi or the connectivity button and the Bluetooth button are large versus being, kind of these small, kind of quick setting areas like they are on a standard Android OS. Nothing OS really, leans into the widgets. I only really have a couple up here. If I had, when you're setting up the Nothing phone, it gives you the option between your standard layout, which is kind of what I have, and then the Nothing OS version, which monochromes everything. So all of your icons get simpler, they get more monochrome. And I tried that, but I couldn't last with it because not all of the icons monochromed, and my eyes just can't deal with the half monochrome, half normal color. It just looks so sloppy to me. So I was like, if this is the default for all app icons, I'm just going to go with it. Otherwise, everything would have looked a lot more like these two buttons that you see up at the top if you're watching the video version. But yeah, kind of, I'd say overall a pretty bug-free experience. You get updates for 3 years on the OS level. Security updates 4 years. Doesn't quite match what you get from the Pixel or the Galaxy lineups. You also get a different cadence. I think you get a bi-monthly update on this phone versus like an every month if you get a Pixel. So it's not horrible, but it's not top of the line. But again, this is an upper mid-range device. Now, finally, we've got the battery, 4,700 milliamp hour battery. You get 45 watts charging if you're plugged in, 15 watts charging if you're wireless, and you got your wireless charging coil back here. And then you also have a 5 watts reverse charging. So if you wanted to charge another device, you could do that. It's pretty slow. It's 5 watts to do that. I had zero battery anxiety with this device. As you can see right now, like it's 12:13. I woke up at 5 this morning and I'm at 84%. This thing's been off the charger since then. I've definitely been using it this morning for a number of things, including navigation. And I'm only at 84%. I feel like the battery is one of the strong features here. And I do think that 1080p display helps with that. It's not driving, this 4K display and wasting a lot of battery along the way. So overall, I'd say, like I said, this is an upper mid-range device. Competes very competently, I'd say, with the kind of entry-level Pixel 7 in many ways. But again, it's hard for a newcomer to match all of the benefits of getting something that's more established like a Pixel 7. You might be spending about the same or actually saving some money to go with the Nothing. But, with the Pixel, you're guaranteed to get great pictures every time. You're guaranteed to get that longer update cycle and cadence. There's just some things that something like a Pixel or a Galaxy can offer that a newcomer out of the gate isn't going to be able to quite offer unless you really love the fact that the design is very, very different and very unique. Not to mention, like I alluded to at the very beginning of this review, it's available in the US but with an asterisk. And what I mean by that is T-Mobile and AT&T. Yes, you can buy this on Nothing's store online and use it on those networks. I'm using it on Mint Mobile, which is an MVNO of T-Mobile and a sponsor of this network. But you can't use this on Verizon. It doesn't have all the antennas to work with the Verizon network. So that's going to limit it a little bit as well. But at the end of the day, it's a solid upper mid-range candy bar phone with a unique LED spin on the back. That's the Nothing Phone 2.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows. Plus, membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed, with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit, and thanks for your support.